The story opens with Maya, a confident and proud young black woman with a natural, stunning afro, facing off with a racist bully at her high school. Maya is known for her intelligence, athleticism, and strong sense of self. However, her bold appearance, especially her afro, has made her a target for the school's most entitled and arrogant bully, Amber. When Amber publicly humiliates Maya by attempting to shave her head, Maya's true strength is revealed, setting the stage for a reckoning neither of them saw coming. Maya sat quietly in the corner of the school gym, her knees pulled to her chest as the sweat from her morning run dried on her skin. The sounds of basketballs bouncing and sneakers screeching against the polished floor faded into the background. She was lost in thought, her mind running through the last few weeks of the semester, the way her classmates had been looking at her, the whispers that followed her down the hallways, and the subtle remarks that seemed to hit her like invisible fists. Her afro, her pride, had become a symbol of defiance in a school full of conformity. The wide curls that framed her face were unapologetic, bold, and fiercely hers. But for Amber, the girl who ran this school with her money, influence, and cruelty, Maya's hair was just another thing to ridicule. "Look at her," Amber's voice, cut through the gym, filled with mockery. "Doesn't she know she looks ridiculous?" Maya's eyes flicked up to find Amber strutting across the gym, her usual clique trailing behind her like obedient shadows. Amber's long, perfectly straight blonde hair cascaded down her back, a stark contrast to Maya's thick, wild curls. Amber had never been shy about her hatred for anything or anyone that didn't fit her image of perfection. Maya had been used to it by now. The subtle sneers, the rude comments. She'd learned how to ignore it all, to carry herself with a quiet dignity that no one could take away. But this time, Amber wasn't just going to throw words. She was going to do something far worse. Amber stopped right in front of her, a cruel smile curling at the corners of her lips. "You know, I think it's time someone did something about that hair of yours," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Her friends giggled behind her, the sound like nails on a chalkboard to Maya's ears. Before Maya could respond, Amber's hand shot out, snatching a pair of clippers from the pocket of her jacket. The world around them seemed to stop as Amber, with a swift and calculated motion, flicked the clippers on. Maya's heart skipped a beat. The room went silent. Every eye in the gym turned toward them. For a moment, it felt like time had frozen, like the walls of the gym had closed in on her. "Don't you dare!" Maya's voice was steady, but inside her mind was racing. Amber didn't flinch. "What's the matter? Too scared to be pretty like the rest of us? Maybe if I shave that mess off your head, you'll actually look decent for once." Maya stood, but Amber shoved her back down with surprising force, pinning her in place. Maya's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she didn't fight back, at least not yet. She knew Amber was trying to provoke her, trying to get her to react. The clippers were inches away from her hair. Amber's eyes were filled with malicious amusement. Her lips curled into a sneer. The audience of students, now gathering at the gym's edge, watched eagerly, as though they were witnessing a show. But then something in Maya snapped. Her fingers uncurled, and in a blur of motion she grabbed Amber's wrist with lightning speed, yanking the clippers from her hand. The crowd gasped. Amber stumbled back, wide-eyed and enraged. "What the hell?" she hissed. "Give that back!" Maya stood tall now, her expression calm but unwavering. "You don't get to touch me," she said quietly, her voice firm and full of power. The gym was silent, except for the pounding of her heart. She was still holding the clippers, but her grip on them wasn't to harm. No, it was a message. It was control. Amber's face turned beet red. "You're going to regret this," she spat, stepping forward, her posture aggressive. Maya's eyes narrowed, and she took a step back, throwing the clippers down onto the floor between them. The challenge was clear. "I don't need this. I don't need you." Her body language said it all. Amber was trying to provoke her, trying to make her lose her composure, but Maya wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. "Pick it up," Maya challenged, her eyes daring Amber to make the next move. The entire gym was holding its breath, watching the drama unfold. Amber blinked, caught off guard by Maya's sudden confidence. For a moment she looked confused. The school bully, the queen bee, was suddenly the one on the back foot. She looked to her friends for support, but none of them said a word. The crowd was on Maya's side now. They could see it. Amber wasn't just bullying Maya anymore. She was trying to take away what Maya had worked so hard to build. Maya's eyes flicked to the clock on the wall. She knew this moment would pass soon, and she didn't want to give Amber the satisfaction of a drawn-out fight. She turned her back to the clippers, her chin high as she walked toward the locker room. Amber didn't move for a long moment, still stunned by the turn of events. The tension in the room was palpable, but as Maya reached the door, she could hear the whispers behind her. Some were still on Amber's side, but more and more were speaking her name with quiet admiration. "You shouldn't have done that," Amber called from behind her, but there was a shakiness in her voice. "You'll regret this." "You don't know who I am." Maya turned, her face calm but eyes fierce. "I know exactly who you are. You're just someone trying to take away what's mine, but I'm not afraid of you." The door closed behind her with a quiet click, and as she made her way through the school halls, Maya felt the familiar knot in her chest loosen. The whispers followed her, but they were different now. No longer were they filled with mockery. They were filled with a sense of awe. She had faced down the queen bee. She had stood up to the system that tried to make her small. She wasn't just the girl with the big hair anymore. She was the girl who had the courage to not back down. Maya entered the locker room and locked the door behind her, leaning against the wall as her breath evened out. The adrenaline was still coursing through her veins, and she felt a strange mixture of anger, empowerment, and relief. As Maya stood there, a realization slowly crept in. This was only the beginning. Amber's attack was personal, but the real challenge lay ahead. What if the fight wasn't just about her? What if it was about everyone like her? Maya's journey had just begun, and it wasn't going to be just about fighting one bully. It was going to be about standing up for something far bigger. Would she let her boxing skills define her, or would she rise to fight the deeper, more insidious systems that tried to tear her down? Full Chapter 2. The school day passed in a blur of whispers, side glances, and a few shy smiles. As Maya walked down the hall, she could feel the change in the air around her. It wasn't the usual hostile silence that had followed her for weeks. No, now there was something different, something almost respectful. Maya had never been one to enjoy the spotlight, but today it felt different. She could tell that her defiance had turned heads. It wasn't just about the confrontation with Amber. It was about standing up for herself in front of the whole school. For the first time, in a long time, Maya felt like she had control over her narrative, but that control came at a price. As the bell rang for lunch, Maya found herself at the cafeteria line, grabbing her usual tray of food. She wasn't hungry, not really, but it was something to do. Something to keep her mind occupied while she waited for whatever would happen. Next, she sat down at a table in the corner, keeping her head down, trying to avoid the curious eyes that seemed to follow her every move. Just as she took a bite of her sandwich, she heard a voice behind her. "Nice performance this morning, Maya," said a familiar voice. Maya turned to see her friend, Jasmine, standing there, her arms crossed, a teasing smile on her face. Jasmine was a part of Maya's small circle of friends, someone who had never cared about the social hierarchies of school, someone who had always believed in Maya's strength. "What do you mean?" Maya asked, trying to keep the tension out of her voice. "I mean, Amber really thought she could just walk all over you, huh?" Jasmine chuckled. "But you stood your ground. I've never seen her so speechless." Maya gave a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It wasn't like that. I just had to get her off me. I'm not saying it was easy, Jasmine continued. I'm saying you took her down in front of the whole school. That's more than just a fight over your hair, Maya. You made a statement. Maya shook her head, looking down at her tray. I don't need a statement. I just need her to leave me alone. But Jasmine wasn't finished. Maya, this isn't just about Amber anymore. She's humiliated, and when a bully like her gets knocked down, she's going to come back with a vengeance. You better be ready. Maya hadn't given much thought to what would come after the confrontation. She had been so caught up in the moment, so focused on making sure Amber didn't get away with it, that she hadn't considered the consequences. Amber wasn't the type to back down easily. Maya knew that. Amber had always been the queen bee, the one who ruled with cruelty and entitlement. Being publicly outsmarted, outclassed, and humiliated by a black girl with an afro, Amber would never forgive her for that. The thought made Maya's stomach tighten, but it wasn't fear. It was something else, a quiet resolve. She had always been taught that when life knocked you down, you didn't just get back up, you stayed up. That's what her father had taught her through boxing lessons in their basement gym, how to fight, not just in the ring, but in life. The gym had always been a sanctuary for Maya, a place where the outside world couldn't touch her. Her father, a former boxer, had always been tough on her. He didn't treat her any differently than he treated his other fighters. If anything, he pushed her harder. Boxing isn't just about strength, he'd tell her, his voice low and focused as she jabbed at the punching bag. It's about understanding your opponent. It's about knowing when to strike and when to pull back. Maya could hear his voice in her mind now, even though it had been years since she'd last trained with him. She could picture him standing beside her, his hands wrapped in tape, as he taught her how to throw a proper punch. But it wasn't just about the punches. It was about building strength, both physical and mental. You're not fighting just to win, he had said during their last session. You're fighting to be respected, to be seen, to let them know that they don't own you. No one does. At the time, Maya had been too young to fully understand. She had taken his words for granted, thinking they only applied to boxing, thinking they were only about fighting in the ring. But now, as Amber's words echoed in her mind, Maya understood what he had meant. She had always fought, just in ways that no one saw. She had fought against the whispers, the judgment, the subtle racism that seemed to follow her everywhere. She had fought just to be seen as a person and not as an object of mockery. Now, Amber had taken it to another level. This wasn't just an attack on her appearance. It was an attack on everything Maya had fought for. The hair, the strength, the pride. Amber wasn't just trying to humiliate Maya. She was trying to erase everything that made her who she was. But Maya wasn't going to let that happen. She knew Amber wasn't the real enemy. Amber was just a pawn in a system that had made her feel entitled to take whatever she wanted. Maya had no intention of backing down. She was going to make sure that Amber, and everyone like her, knew that Maya was not the one to be trampled on. Later that day, as Maya was walking home, she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't turn around. She already knew who it was. Amber! "What do you think you're doing?" Amber called out, her voice sharp, her footsteps quickening to catch up. Maya stopped but didn't turn. She was waiting for Amber to make her move. "I'm not finished with you," Amber continued. "You think you can embarrass me in front of everyone and just walk away? You're gonna regret it." Maya turned slowly, her gaze unwavering. "You don't scare me." Amber's eyes flickered with something, anger, humiliation, fear, but she quickly regained her composure, a cruel smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "You think you can take me down? Just like that? You're nothing, Maya." "You don't know who I am," Maya said softly, her voice like steel. "I'm not the same girl you used to push around. You don't get to erase me." As Amber's words lingered in the air, Maya knew this was far from over. The battle for her respect had only just begun. Amber wouldn't stop until she had gotten what she wanted, and Maya had no choice but to face her. But this time, Maya wouldn't just fight with her fists, she would fight with everything she had, because this was more than just a schoolyard fight. It was about reclaiming her identity and making sure Amber understood that no one could take that away. Full Chapter 3. The days after the confrontation with Amber felt like a strange kind of limbo. Maya could feel the weight of the aftermath pressing on her, heavier than anything she had faced before. Amber's humiliation had been swift and brutal, but Maya's victory over her had come at a high cost. The rumors, the stares, the whispers, they were more than she could handle alone. It was no longer just Amber against her. It felt like the whole school was watching, waiting for her to slip up. The fact that she'd stood her ground only seemed to make Amber angrier. Amber wasn't backing down. In fact, she was escalating. Every day since the incident, Maya had felt the pressure mounting. Amber had spread rumors about her, made snide remarks through her friends, and even tried to sabotage Maya's work in class. But the worst part was the way Amber made sure to target her in public, mocking her appearance, trying to draw attention to the very thing that had caused her so much pain, her hair, her pride. Maya had never been one to back down from a fight, but this time it was different. Amber's bullying wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. It was a direct attack on her identity, and everything Maya had worked so hard to build. And yet Maya couldn't bring herself to be afraid. Instead, the fire inside her grew. She thought back to the boxing lessons her father had given her, the long afternoons spent in their basement gym. Her father, though tough and unyielding, had always taught her that a true fighter never acted out of anger. A true fighter was calm, focused, determined. Every punch, every move had to come from a place of clarity. Maya hadn't just learned how to fight in the ring, she'd learned how to fight for what mattered. But now, standing against Amber, the fight wasn't just about self-defense, it was about something bigger. It was about standing up for herself, for her dignity, and for the respect she deserved. The bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Maya gathered her things slowly, her mind already racing through the upcoming hours. She had boxing training later, but she needed to find a way to clear her mind before then. As she walked out of the classroom, she felt the familiar sting of eyes on her. Amber and her friends were sitting at their usual spot by the lockers, their laughter echoing down the hallway. Maya's breath caught as she spotted Amber, her eyes locking with Maya's as soon as their gazes met. Amber's smirk was all too familiar, but it wasn't the same smug expression as before. There was something different in it now, a quiet fury, masked beneath layers of arrogance. Amber was trying to control her. Maya could feel it. Amber stood up, pushing through her group of friends, and walked directly toward Maya. There was no mistaking her intentions. "Do you think I've forgotten what you did?" Amber sneered, stepping into Maya's path. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. And now I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are." Maya's fists clenched at her sides. She could feel her pulse quicken. This was it. This was the moment she had been preparing for. Not just with her boxing lessons, but with the quiet strength she had cultivated in herself over the years. She wasn't going to back down. "What's your problem, Amber?" Maya said, her voice calm but firm. She could see Amber falter. Just for a second, but it was enough to get her attention. "You don't scare me." Amber's expression darkened, but Maya didn't flinch. "You think you're so special with your big hair," Amber said, her tone dripping with mockery. "But you're just like every other freak, trying to make yourself stand out. You'll never be like me, Maya. You'll never fit in." Maya's mind flashed back to her father's voice, echoing in her ears. Fighting isn't just about defending yourself. It's about being true to who you are, no matter what anyone else says. She stood straighter, her gaze unwavering. "I'm not trying to fit in with you. I'm trying to be me. and I'm not going to let anyone like you take that away from me." Amber's eyes flared with rage. Without warning, she shoved Maya hard, sending her stumbling back. The push wasn't enough to knock her over, but it was enough to make the other students around them notice. Maya stood there for a moment, her heart pounding, the sting of Amber's shove still fresh. The adrenaline rushed through her veins, but she didn't act on it. She didn't need to. Not yet. "You're going to regret this," Amber spat, her hands clenched into fists. "I swear, Maya, you're going to wish you never crossed me." Maya didn't say anything more. She didn't need to. She turned, walking away slowly, leaving Amber fuming in the hallway. As Maya made her way to the gym for her training, her thoughts were a swirl of anger and determination. Amber had pushed her, but Amber didn't know who she was messing with. The gym was quiet when Maya entered. The heavy bag hung in the corner, swaying slightly as the lights above flickered. Maya's coach, Coach Jennings, was already waiting. For her, his gaze serious as he observed her entering. "You ready?" he asked, his voice deep and steady. Maya didn't answer immediately. She walked over to the heavy bag, standing in front of it as her fists loosened, readying herself for the session. She had to focus. She had to channel everything she was feeling into her training. Coach Jennings had been training fighters for years, and he knew when someone was ready for the real fight. He'd seen the way Maya had been holding back, how the emotional toll of the bullying had begun to weigh on her. He'd always known she had the potential to be great, but now she was starting to understand what that truly meant. "Amber's got you rattled, huh?" Coach Jennings asked, breaking the silence. Maya nodded slowly, but then she squared her shoulders and stepped forward. "She won't win. She can't." Coach Jennings smiled slightly, a knowing look in his eyes. "Good. Now show me what you've got." The next hour was a blur of punches, jabs, and footwork. Maya threw herself into each strike, her muscles working in perfect rhythm. The anger and frustration from the day melting away with every blow she delivered to the heavy bag. The sound of her fists hitting the bag was a catharsis. Each punch, a release, each strike a reminder that she could fight not just with her hands, but with her heart. Coach Jennings watched closely, making adjustments to her form, pushing her harder. "Focus, Maya. You're not just fighting her. You're fighting everything she represents. You're fighting to show them that you don't have to fit their mold. You can break it." Maya's breaths came faster, her movements sharper. She could feel it now, the strength, the control. Amber might have been a bully, but Maya was more than just a girl with an afro. She was a fighter, a force to be reckoned with. Maya's training takes on new meaning as she prepares herself for the ultimate confrontation with Amber. But the fight she faces is no longer just about schoolyard rivalry. It's about her identity, her strength, and her place in a world that constantly tries to define her. The next round is coming, and Maya will have to decide how much she's willing to fight for who she is. Full Chapter 4. The days that followed Maya's last confrontation with Amber felt like walking on a tightrope. She could sense the shift in the school's atmosphere. Half the students were in awe, watching her with a newfound respect, while the other half were waiting for her to slip up, to prove that she wasn't the force she appeared to be. It was clear that Amber had not forgotten. She wasn't the type to let a defeat go without making sure everyone else knew how much it stung. But that only made Maya more determined to keep her cool. The last thing she wanted was to give Amber the satisfaction of seeing her unravel. Maya was walking to her next class when she saw Amber waiting by the locker room, a sly grin on her face. Her entourage of friends, who usually followed her like sheep, was nowhere to be seen. It was just Amber, standing there with a look that could freeze water. "You think you won, don't you?" Amber called out, her voice sharp with venom. Maya didn't stop walking. She just kept her pace steady, her head high, not looking at Amber, you can walk around here like you're some kind of queen now, Amber continued, her tone mocking, but you'll always be nothing but a freak. Maya's fists clenched at her sides. She didn't stop. She didn't turn. But Amber wasn't done. I'm not finished with you, Amber added. You'll regret ever thinking you could embarrass me in front of everyone. Maya stopped now, finally facing her bully. Her voice was quiet, but filled with steel. I'm not scared of you, Amber. I never was. Amber stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. You'll regret those words. I'm going to make sure you know who's in charge around here. I'm not done with you yet. Maya's eyes were hard. You've been in charge of what? Ruining people's lives? Making everyone else feel small? I'm not afraid of you. The space between them seemed to stretch, but neither moved. Amber could see it. Maya wasn't the same girl she had been before. She wasn't the shy, quiet girl with the big hair. She was someone else now. Someone who wasn't going to back down. Amber reached into her bag and pulled out a pair of scissors. Maya's stomach twisted at the sight of them. She had seen Amber pull this stunt before. Whenever she wanted to humiliate someone, make them feel less than human, she would cut their hair. It was a twisted ritual for Amber and her friends. I think it's time we did something about this hair of yours, Amber said, stepping closer. Maya didn't flinch. She wasn't going to let Amber take control of this situation again. She had fought too hard to get here, to stand up for herself, to be cowed again by this girl who didn't even know what true strength looked like. You can try, Maya said, but it's not going to happen. Not now. Not ever. Amber's eyes flashed with frustration, and for a split second, Maya saw the girl's uncertainty. Amber wasn't used to not having the upper hand. She wasn't used to being the one who was afraid. And in that moment, Maya realized that this wasn't just about hair. It was about control. Amber wanted to control her image. She wanted to force Maya to feel inferior, to make her believe that she didn't belong. But Maya wasn't going to give that to her, not anymore. Maya walked past Amber, brushing her shoulder against hers in the process. She didn't look back, didn't say another word. She didn't need to. Amber had lost. Maya's day was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt lighter. She had stood her ground. She had reclaimed a small piece of herself, and it felt good. It felt like victory, even if the war wasn't over. That night, Maya went straight to the gym. The punching bag hung in front of her like a silent opponent, waiting for her to strike. She had always loved the rhythmic sound of her gloves connecting with the bag, the way it helped clear her mind, the way the tension and stress seemed to melt away with each punch. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, her movements were sharper, her strikes were harder. She was feeling more focused than ever before, like the anger inside her had turned into pure, unyielding energy. The world outside could try to tear her down, but she knew that inside this gym she had control. She had power. Her father's voice echoed in her head as she threw a combination of punches. Boxing isn't about rage, it's about control. And Maya understood now. It wasn't just about fighting Amber. It was about fighting back against everything that had held her down for so long. The expectations, the racism, the bullies, the systems that wanted to make her feel less than. Every punch she threw was a defiance, every jab a stand for her identity. She wasn't just fighting for respect in the school hallway, she was fighting for her right to exist as she was, unapologetically. The next morning, as Maya entered school, she felt different. It wasn't just the usual looks or the whispers. There was something in the air that felt almost electric. The tension that had been hanging over her seemed to have shifted. Amber was nowhere to be found. For the first time in weeks, Maya didn't feel like she was being hunted. She wasn't. Looking over her shoulder, waiting for the next attack. Instead, she walked with her head high, her steps firm, her mind clear. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her thoughts. She pulled it out and saw a message from Jasmine. Amber is planning something big today. You ready? Maya frowned as she read the message, the weight of Jasmine's words settling heavily in her chest. Amber wasn't done. She wouldn't back down that easily, but Maya wasn't either. She was ready. She had learned to fight. She had learned to fight for herself, for her dignity, for the truth. And whatever Amber was planning, Maya was going to be ready for it. Amber might have laid low for a while, but she wasn't finished. Maya could feel it in her bones, the calm before the storm. But this time Maya was stronger. She wasn't just fighting for her reputation anymore. She was fighting for the right to exist as herself. And when Amber made her next move, Maya would be ready. Full Chapter 5. The day after her confrontation with Amber had left Maya exhausted, but strangely calm. Amber's taunts, the cutting words, the harassment, it had all been aimed at breaking her down, forcing her into submission. But Maya hadn't folded. She had stood her ground, and for the first time in months, she felt like she was starting to control the narrative of her own life. But with control came a deeper sense of responsibility. Amber's humiliation at the hands of Maya hadn't gone unnoticed. It was more than just the moment in the hallway. Amber had rallied her remaining supporters, and now the full weight of her influence in school was shifting. Amber's game was about to get more dangerous, and Maya wasn't sure she was ready for the fallout. That afternoon, as Maya made her way home, she was stopped by Jasmine. The two had grown close over the past few months, but Maya still found herself reluctant to burden her friend with too many details. Jasmine had her own battles, and Maya didn't want to make her worries even heavier. "Hey, Maya," Jasmine called, walking alongside her. "We need to talk." Maya raised an eyebrow, sensing the weight in Jasmine's voice. "About what?" "I don't know if you noticed, but the girls who were with Amber, they're turning on her," Jasmine said quietly. "Some of them are starting to say stuff about her, stuff they never would have said before. But it's not just about you, it's about her. Amber's losing her grip on everything, and I don't think she's going to take it well." Maya sighed, her mind racing. She had noticed the tension in the air around Amber and her usual group of followers. They had always been a loyal clique, tightly bound by Amber's manipulative charm. But Jasmine was right. It was unraveling, and when a bully like Amber started to lose control, the damage was always worse. "I figured as much," Maya replied. "But what does it matter if her friends are turning on her? It's not going to stop her from coming after me." Jasmine shook her head. "It's not just about you anymore. Amber's losing her status, her power, and she won't let that go easily." By the time Maya got home, the weight of the situation had settled in. She stepped into the house, her shoes echoing against the hardwood floor as she tossed her bag onto the couch. The house was silent, her parents still at work. She moved toward the kitchen, taking a deep breath and leaning against the counter. It had been weeks since the last time she'd really thought about her boxing lessons. At first, it had been something she did to get out of her head, something her father had insisted upon when she was younger. Boxing was supposed to be a way to build physical strength, but over time it had become something much deeper. Her father had always told her, "You're a fighter, Maya." But fighting isn't just about throwing punches. It's about knowing who you are and staying true to that. That phrase kept coming back to her over and over again. Staying true to who you are. Maya had stood up to Amber. She had faced down the bully who had tormented her for so long. But now, it wasn't just about Amber. It was about something bigger. The fight for her identity, her place in the world. That evening, as the sun began to set, Maya found herself standing in front of the mirror, looking at her reflection. She stared at her thick, wild hair, her proud afro, her symbol of defiance, of standing against the tide. And as she looked at herself, she saw more than just a girl who had been bullied. She saw a fighter. She wasn't going to let Amber, or anyone else, define her anymore. Maya grabbed her gym bag, threw on her sneakers, and made her way to the gym. The weight of the day, the anxiety, the fear, it all melted away as soon as she entered the familiar space. The sound of gloves hitting the heavy bag, the thump of footwork against the floor. It was her sanctuary. She was safe here. Coach Jennings was already there, leaning against the wall, his arms crossed. He looked up when Maya entered, raising an eyebrow. "You ready to train?" "I'm ready," she said with a confidence that surprised even her. Maya walked to the punching bag, her mind already focusing on the rhythm of her breath. The bag was heavy, but it was her opponent. It wasn't Amber, it wasn't the school, it was just her and the bag, and the sound of her punches connecting. Her gloves hit the bag with a sharp smack. She imagined Amber's face, her smug smile, the cruel words she had thrown at Maya. Every strike was a release, a way to get the tension out of her system. Another jab, another hook, another cross. She kept her eyes focused on the target, blocking out the world around her. The more she hit the bag, the clearer her thoughts became. Coach Jennings watched her for a few moments before speaking. "You're throwing punches, Maya, but are you fighting?" Maya paused, lowering her gloves and turning toward him. "What do you mean?" "You're letting your anger take control," Coach Jennings said, his tone calm but firm. "You're good. You've got the power, the speed, and the focus. But you've got to fight with clarity. Control yourself. Understand what you're up against." Maya exhaled, taking a deep breath. "I understand. It's not just about fighting Amber. It's about everything. About the world trying to put me down." Coach Jennings nodded. "Exactly. Now show me what you got. Control, focus." Maya went back to the bag, this time throwing her punches with a precision she hadn't thought possible. Her movements were sharp and deliberate. With every punch, she was showing not just her power, but her control. As the minutes passed, she began to feel something change within herself. Her strikes were no longer fueled by anger. They were controlled. They were calculated. After her session, Coach Jennings gave her a nod of approval. "You're ready for more, Maya. But remember, boxing isn't just about defeating your opponent. It's about defeating yourself. Master yourself and you'll win every time." Maya's chest rose and fell as she caught her breath. "Thanks, Coach." As she left the gym, she felt lighter. Not because she was finished with the fight, not because she had won, but because she was starting to understand what it meant to truly fight, to truly win. Maya had learned how to control herself, to fight with purpose. But as Amber's plans to humiliate her grow more dangerous, Maya will soon face a test unlike anything she's ever experienced. The true battle isn't just about strength. It's about who will emerge victorious when everything they've ever fought for is on the line. Full Chapter 6. The gym was quiet when Maya entered the next afternoon, but the air felt charged with anticipation. Every training session had led to this moment, the point where her anger, her fear, and her ambition collided into something stronger than anything she'd ever felt. But Maya had come to understand something important in the last few weeks. While boxing had given her control over her body, it wasn't just her physical strength that she needed to rely on. It was her mind, her heart, the resolve to keep going when the world tried to knock her down. Coach Jennings had taught her well, focus, control. And now, more than ever, Maya understood that fighting for herself wasn't just about the punches. It was about the mental fortitude to survive. But as she prepared for her session that afternoon, the weight of what she was about to face was heavy on her shoulders. Amber was no longer just a bully in the halls. She was a force, a system of entitlement that refused to let go, even when it was losing. And Maya could feel it. The storm was coming. The school had turned into a battlefield. Maya had been trying to keep her head down, but it was impossible. Amber had launched her first full-scale attack by spreading rumors about Maya across the school. painting her as a troublemaker, a freak who couldn't fit into the normal social structure of their high school. It wasn't just rumors this time. Amber had taken things to the next level. Maya was walking down the hallway when a student who she didn't recognize came up to her and muttered, "You're just a joke, you know that." Maya stopped in her tracks, staring at the student who now walked past her with a smirk. The message was clear. Amber had started to turn her peers against Maya, planting seeds of doubt about her character, her identity. It wasn't just the girls Amber had once controlled. It was everyone. The worst part wasn't the words. It wasn't the whispers behind her back. It was the subtle way it was starting to affect her. People looking at her differently, holding back, avoiding eye contact, pretending not to notice the girl with the big hair who was starting to make waves. It wasn't long before the principal's office called. Maya had been summoned there, an ominous feeling in the pit of her stomach. As she walked through the empty hallways, her mind raced, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. Amber had always been a master of manipulation, but this felt different. This felt like an orchestrated attack. When she entered the principal's office, she was met by the school counselor, Mrs. Watson, along with Principal Henderson. Their stern expressions made it clear that something serious was going down. "Maya," Mrs. Watson said, her tone unusually cold, "we've received some disturbing reports about your behavior recently. There's been a lot of talk about you disrupting school activities, causing unnecessary tension." Maya stood taller, her posture still calm, despite the sudden spike of anxiety in her chest. "Disrupting activities? I haven't done anything to disrupt this school. I'm just trying to live my life." Principal Henderson folded his arms across his chest. "We're hearing a lot of complaints, Maya, and I'm afraid that the situation is getting out of hand. We've been hearing a lot of reports from your peers, and it's starting to look like you're the one causing the problems." Maya's heart sank. This wasn't just a personal attack anymore. This was systematic. This was Amber using her influence to turn the system against Maya. She couldn't believe it. Not after everything she'd already been through. "Who's complaining?" Maya asked, her voice steady. "Because I'm pretty sure this is all coming from one person. One person who's been making my life miserable since the first day of school." The principal's eyes narrowed. "It's not just one person, Maya. We've had multiple reports from different sources. Your actions are starting to make others feel uncomfortable. You need to be mindful of how you're presenting yourself." Maya could feel her anger rise, but she forced herself to stay calm. "This is about Amber, isn't it? You're letting her control this whole thing." Mrs. Watson exchanged a glance with the principal, clearly uncomfortable. But neither one said a word. Maya didn't need them to. She already knew the truth. Amber had been manipulating the system, just like she had manipulated every other student she could. And now she was using the school's authority to silence Maya. "I don't have time for this," Maya said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm not the problem here. Amber is. But you can keep pretending that I'm the one causing the trouble, if that makes you feel better. But just know that I'm not going to let her do this to me. Not anymore." As Maya left the principal's office, the weight of what had just happened pressed down on her. Amber was playing a dangerous game now. She wasn't just humiliating Maya, she was using the power of the school to push her out. But Maya couldn't afford to back down. Not this time. Later that evening, Maya found herself in the gym again, the familiar sounds of punches against the heavy bag bringing her some comfort. She was alone, except for Coach Jennings, who was watching from the corner of the gym, his expression unreadable. Maya's movements were sharper tonight. Her strikes weren't just fueled by anger, they were fueled by a sense of purpose. Each punch was a declaration, a refusal to be silenced. Coach Jennings stepped forward. "You're getting better," he said, his voice low. "But you're holding something back. What's going on in that head of yours?" Maya stopped, her gloves still clenched in her hands. She could feel the sweat dripping down her face, mixing with the tears that threatened to form. But she wouldn't. "Let them fall. Not yet. They're trying to break me," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Amber's turned the whole school against me. She's got everyone believing that I'm the problem." Coach Jennings didn't say anything at first. He just nodded, watching her. "What are you going to do about it?" Maya stood tall, looking up at him. "I'm going to fight. I'm not backing down." Coach Jennings smiled slightly. "Good. That's the only thing you can do." Maya returned home later that night, the weight of the day still heavy on her shoulders. Her family was already asleep and the house was quiet. She sat at the kitchen table, her thoughts racing. Amber wasn't just trying to humiliate her anymore. She was trying to take everything away from her. But Maya wasn't going to let her. She would fight back, just like she had learned in the ring. It wasn't just about punches. It was about holding on to who you were, no matter what. Amber had stepped up her game, and the consequences were starting to hit Maya harder than ever, but Maya wasn't about to let her win. She had learned to fight in the ring, but now she was about to face the biggest fight of her life against Amber and the system that had tried to silence her. What will Maya do next? Will she stand firm, or will Amber's tactics break her resolve? Full. Chapter 7. The days following Maya's visit to the principal's office felt like they were dragging on. She had been suspended for a week, a decision that made her feel both betrayed and trapped. The false narrative that Amber had crafted had taken root, spreading through the school like wildfire. Now, the same students who had once watched Maya with curiosity and admiration were beginning to look at her with doubt, suspicion. The isolation was the hardest part. Amber had found a way to pull at every thread of Maya's life, unraveling her connections, breaking apart her social circles. Maya felt as if she were walking in a fog, her world reduced to the walls of her room, the gym, and the streets where she ran to release the stress and pressure. She could barely bring herself to look at the text messages from her few remaining friends. The ones who hadn't entirely turned against her were too afraid to stand by her publicly. The weight of being on the wrong side of a social hierarchy that had been in place for years was overwhelming. Amber's influence ran deep, and Maya's rebellion had made her a target. It was late one evening when Maya sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through social media, seeing post after post about her. Amber had found a way to get her face plastered on every corner of the school's online community, mocking her appearance, spreading rumors about her being unstable. But it was the subtle messages, those veiled threats and twisted narratives about Maya being a troublemaker, that cut the deepest. She was just about to turn off her phone when a message from Jasmine popped up. "Maya, I'm with you. Don't listen to them. They're trying to break you down, but you're stronger than this. You'll get through it. Let's talk tomorrow, okay?" Maya's fingers hovered over the screen. Jasmine had been one of the few who had stayed by her side, even when it wasn't easy, and yet Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of her isolation. Jasmine's words were comforting, but the reality was that Maya was alone in this fight. Amber had isolated her in every way she could, turning people against her, painting her as the villain in her own story. But then, something unexpected happened. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her father. Her heart skipped a beat. They hadn't talked much lately. Her father was busy with work, and she had been trying to handle everything on her own. "I've been thinking a lot about you lately, Maya. I know things are tough right now, but you've got the strength to get through this. Remember everything I've taught you. It's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Don't let anyone take away your pride." Her father's words, always so simple, so direct, struck a chord deep within her. She could hear his voice in her head as clearly as if he were standing right next to her. It's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Maya clenched her fists, the reminder of her father's lessons reigniting something inside her. She wasn't going to let Amber, or anyone, break her. Amber could say whatever she wanted. She could manipulate the system, turn her friends and peers against Maya, but Maya wasn't going to let her take away her sense of self. The next morning, Maya woke up early, the weight of the previous days still heavy on her chest. But today felt different. Today she was going to stop hiding. She wasn't going to let Amber control her narrative anymore. The fight had started and it was time to finish it. Maya slipped on her gym clothes and grabbed her bag, heading straight for the gym. The sun had barely risen and the streets were still quiet, but the silence felt comforting. She didn't need anyone else right now. She just needed to be alone, to focus. The gym was empty when Maya arrived. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and leather. She walked to the heavy bag, her mind calm despite the anger still simmering inside her. She wrapped her hands in tape, feeling the familiar tension in her muscles as she prepared to train. The sound of her gloves hitting the bag was almost soothing. Each punch felt like a release of everything she'd been holding in. The tension in her body, the fear, the doubt. Each strike carried a piece of it away. Her movements were fluid now, controlled. She wasn't just throwing punches, she was making a statement. The bag swayed back and forth with the force of her strikes, each one punctuating her resolve. She wasn't just hitting the bag. She was hitting back at every lie Amber had spread, every moment of doubt that had crept into her mind. She was fighting for her truth. She was fighting for herself. By the time Coach Jennings walked into the gym, Maya had lost track of how long she had been working. Sweat streamed down her face, but her breathing was steady. The anger she had felt only hours ago had transformed into something else: focus, purpose. Coach Jennings watched her for a moment, his eyes scanning her movements before he spoke. "Good," he said, his voice deep and approving. "You've got your focus back. But it's not just about the bag, Maya. It's about how you handle the pressure outside the gym. Can you keep this composure when the world is against you?" Maya didn't answer immediately. She was still catching her breath, her gloves hanging loosely at her sides. "I've been thinking about it," she finally said. "It's not just Amber, it's everything. All these people trying to make me feel small. I'm not letting them, not anymore." Coach Jennings nodded, stepping closer. "Good. Don't let anyone take that from you. The fight outside the ring, it's always going to be harder, but you've got something they don't: control." That afternoon, Maya returned home, the weight of the day still hanging on her shoulders. She sat in front of the mirror in her room, staring at her reflection. The fight had only just begun, and Amber wasn't going to let up. But Maya had learned something crucial in the gym today. This wasn't just about surviving. It was about standing tall, about maintaining her dignity and her sense of self, no matter how hard the world tried to push her down. Maya wasn't going to let anyone define her. She was more than what Amber thought she was. More than the rumors, the bullying and the fear. She was a fighter, and no one could take that from her. Amber's final attempt to destroy Maya's reputation is looming. The social pressure is mounting, and it's clear that Amber won't stop until she has completely broken Maya. But Maya's resolve is stronger than ever. She's ready to face Amber head-on, using everything she's learned in the ring and in life to finally take back control of her story. Will she be able to rise above the attack, or will Amber's relentless campaign break her? Full Chapter 8. It felt like the world had closed in around Maya. The whispers, the glares, the taunts, they had all become a constant presence, a suffocating weight that never left her. Amber's attacks had gone from subtle to vicious. The rumors, the false accusations, the threats, they were relentless. It was as if Amber had made it her mission to make Maya's life a living hell. And the worst part was, Maya couldn't even escape it. She'd tried. She'd hidden in her room, trained in the gym, tried to focus on the one thing that had always been her refuge. But the attacks didn't stop. They only grew worse. Amber had found new ways to target her, ways that went beyond just the school halls. It started with the anonymous messages, screenshots of Maya's private conversations twisted into something they weren't. Then came the graffiti, sprayed, on the walls of the school bathrooms, with Maya's name plastered across it, accompanied by insults and lies. Amber had made it clear she wasn't going to stop until Maya was destroyed. The school was turning into a battlefield, and Maya was running out of places to hide. It was after school when it all came to a head. Maya was walking down the hall, heading toward the locker room, when she saw a crowd gathered outside the door. She froze. She hadn't seen Amber in a few days, and the silence had unsettled her. She had a feeling Amber wasn't done with her, not by a long shot. When she pushed through the crowd, her stomach twisted. There, on the wall of the locker room, was the final blow. The worst kind of humiliation. Amber had spray-painted a giant, mocking portrait of Maya's face. Her eyes were exaggerated, her afro blown up to an impossible size, with the words, "Crazy Black Girl," written beneath it in bold letters. Maya's heart sank. The public humiliation was one thing. But this was a calculated, malicious attempt to destroy her identity, to strip away everything that made her who she was. Her breath caught in her throat, and for the first time in a long time, she felt that old, familiar feeling. The urge to run, to hide, to pretend it wasn't happening. But then she remembered. Her father's words, the ones that had stayed with her even in her darkest moments. "You can't run from the fight, Maya. You fight because you have to, not because you want to." She looked at the graffiti again, her fists clenched. Amber had crossed a line. This wasn't just about humiliating her, it was about trying to erase her. But Maya wasn't going to let her. She turned, walking toward the nearest classroom, where she knew Amber would be waiting. Amber had always been bold, and now she was too proud to hide. When Maya stepped into the classroom, Amber was sitting in the back, surrounded by her usual group of followers, her eyes locked on her phone, as she scrolled through her social media. But when she looked up and saw Maya standing there, her smirk faded for just a second. "You're late, freak," Amber sneered. Maya's gaze was unwavering. She wasn't going to back down, not this time. "Did you really think this would break?" "Me," Maya said, her voice calm but full of fire. She stepped forward, her feet firm against the floor. "You've been trying to tear me down for weeks, Amber, but you don't get to control who I am." Amber stood up slowly, a malicious smile creeping onto her face. "You think I'm trying to control you? No, Maya, I'm just reminding you of your place." Maya felt the anger rising in her chest, but she held it in check. She couldn't let Amber win by losing her temper. "Do you really think you can define my place?" Maya said, her voice steady, but her heart pounding. "I'm not the crazy black girl you painted on that wall. I'm more than that. And no matter what you do, I'll never let you make me feel less than I am." Amber took a step toward her, eyes flashing with fury. "You're nothing but a joke. You'll never fit in. You'll always be an outsider." Maya met her gaze head on. "And that's exactly why you're afraid of me, because I don't need to fit in with your world. I'm creating my own." Amber's face twisted in rage, and in that moment Maya could see the vulnerability beneath the arrogance. Amber had tried to break her, tried to mold her into something she wasn't, but it was clear now Amber was the one who was broken. She was the one who needed to tear others down to feel powerful. "You're pathetic," Amber spat, but Maya didn't flinch. "I'm not the one who needs to tear people down to feel good about myself," Maya said, her words sharp. "But you're about to learn something the hard way." Maya turned and walked out of the classroom, her heart still racing, but the fire inside her burning brighter than ever. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. The words Amber had thrown at her still echoed in her mind, but now they felt different. They no longer had the power to make her feel small. She grabbed her gym bag, deciding that a late-night run was the only way to clear her head. The gym was empty when she arrived, just the way she liked it. The sound of her gloves hitting the bag was like a drumbeat, each punch resonating with the anger, the frustration, the resolve that had built up inside her over the past few weeks. She had been afraid of this moment, afraid of the point where Amber's bullying would break her. But now, standing in the gym, Maya realized something. Amber wasn't the one breaking her. She was breaking herself open, releasing all the pain, all the doubt, all the things she had been holding on to for too long. The next day, Amber's attack on Maya went public. The image of the graffiti, with its mocking racist words, spread across social media like wildfire. Maya could feel her phone buzz constantly, messages, notifications, alerts. She knew what they said about her, what Amber had made sure they would see, but something inside her had shifted. She wasn't going to let Amber define her anymore. Amber had thrown everything at her, her reputation, her pride, her dignity. But Maya wasn't backing down. Maya's resolve has never been stronger. She's finally starting to see herself for who she truly is, and she's ready to fight back. But Amber's attack has shaken her to her core. The confrontation isn't over. It's just beginning. What will Maya do next? Will she stand firm, or will Amber's relentless campaign break her down? The final confrontation looms. Full Chapter 9. The days following the public humiliation felt like a blur. Maya could barely concentrate in class, her mind constantly reeling from Amber's attack. The graffiti, the lies, the public smear campaign, everything had been designed to destroy her. But despite the weight pressing down on her chest, Maya had come to one undeniable conclusion. She was not going to let Amber win. The school had exploded with the news. Whispers in the halls had turned into conversations in classrooms, and the gossip flooded social media. But Maya didn't feel the shame that Amber had hoped for. Instead, she felt the stirrings of something much stronger: determination. The more Amber tried to tear her down, the more Maya wanted to stand tall. Maya found herself walking the hallways with a new sense of purpose. Her posture had shifted, her steps more confident. She wasn't walking as the girl trying to avoid attention anymore. She was walking as someone who had finally found her own voice. As the school day ended, Maya was heading toward the gym for another training session when she felt a presence behind her. She didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Amber, Maya, stopped in her tracks, her shoulders straightening, the weight of the impending confrontation now sinking in. She had avoided this moment for too long, but it was here. Amber had cornered her, and there was no way out. Amber appeared in front of her, flanked by a couple of her remaining followers who stood like silent statues, no longer interested in the fight, but just waiting for the spectacle to unfold. Amber looked at Maya with a mix of disdain and amusement. "You still don't get it, do you?" Amber said, her voice dripping with venom. "You're nothing. You always will be nothing." "You're a joke." Maya didn't flinch. She had heard this for weeks now, the same empty words repeated, each one meant to chip away at her self-worth. But Maya wasn't going to let them in anymore. "I don't need your approval, Amber," Maya replied, her voice quiet but firm. "You can say whatever you want, but it doesn't change who I am." Amber's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" Maya shook her head. "I've already won, Amber. You just haven't figured that out yet." The words hung in the air, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The sound of distant footsteps echoed down the hall, but neither of them moved. Amber stared at her, trying to find the words that would land a blow, but nothing came. She couldn't touch Maya anymore. "Your little friends won't protect you," Amber sneered. "They'll all turn on you just like they always do. You'll always be alone, Maya. You'll always be different. You're a freak." Maya took a step closer, not out of anger, but out of resolve. "And that's exactly what scares you, isn't it? I don't need to fit into your world. I never did." Amber recoiled, the edge of her confidence cracking for the first time. Maya could see it, the fear. Amber wasn't afraid of being alone. She was afraid of being exposed. She was afraid of Maya standing up, of Maya proving her wrong. "You've made this personal, Amber," Maya continued. "But this isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about me, standing here, owning who I am. It's about the people who look at me and see someone who refuses to be torn down." Amber's eyes flashed with rage, her hand flying out toward Maya, fingers curled into a fist. The movement was fast, but Maya was faster. With a fluid motion, she sidestepped Amber's attempted slap, catching her wrist mid-air and twisting it with practiced ease. Amber cried out in surprise, her balance faltering as she stumbled back. "You're not the boss of me anymore," Maya said quietly, her grip on Amber's wrist unyielding. Amber's followers remained silent, their expressions unreadable. Power dynamics had shifted. For the first time, it was Amber who was powerless. Maya released Amber's wrist, taking a step back. "I don't need to hurt you to win. You've already lost." Amber stood there, humiliated and speechless. For a moment, she was just a girl in a hallway, trying to hold on to something she had already lost. Maya's training session that evening was more intense than ever. The weight of the day hung over her, but instead of letting it crush her, she channeled it into her movements. Each jab, each cross, each uppercut was a release. She had never felt more focused, more in control. She was no longer fighting to protect herself. She was fighting for her right to exist, for her right to be proud of who she was. Coach Jennings watched her, his expression thoughtful. After a long period of silence, he spoke. "You've got a fire in you, Maya. I can see it now. But there's more to being a fighter than just punching bags and training hard. It's about knowing when to fight and when to walk away, when to stand firm and when to move forward. You've got the strength. But do you have the wisdom to choose your battles?" Maya paused, the words sinking in. Coach Jennings was right. She had the fight in her, but she needed to fight smart. She couldn't let Amber drag her into a cycle of hatred and violence. She had to rise above that. "I've learned a lot from this, Coach," Maya said, her voice steady. "I've learned that I can't fight everyone, but I can fight for myself. I can stand up for who I am and not let anyone take that from me." Coach Jennings gave a small nod. "That's what makes a true fighter. Not how many fights you win, but how you carry yourself in the face of them." The next day, as Maya entered school, she felt the weight of everything that had happened. Amber's public humiliation, the threats, the rumors. But this time, it was different. She walked with her head high, her shoulders squared. She wasn't walking through the halls as a victim anymore. She was walking as someone who had claimed her power back. Amber wasn't done. Maya knew that. But Maya had already made it clear she wasn't afraid. The battle is far from over. Amber's reign of terror has only just begun to unravel, and Maya's resolve will be tested in ways she hasn't yet imagined. Will she stand firm, or will Amber's final retaliation break her? One thing is clear. Maya is no longer just a fighter in the ring. She's fighting for her right to live on her own terms, and she's not backing down. Full Chapter 10. The moment had arrived. The final confrontation between Maya and Amber was looming, and Maya could feel it in every fiber of her being. For weeks, Amber had manipulated the situation, tried to break her down, humiliate her in front of her peers. Amber had gotten comfortable in her power, believing that she could control everything and everyone. But now, Maya was done being controlled. Maya knew what Amber was planning. It wasn't just about the rumors, the graffiti, or the threats anymore. Amber was going to pull out all the stops and try to destroy Maya's reputation once and for all. And the worst part, she was going to do it in front of everyone. The school assembly that was scheduled for the end of the week was supposed to be a routine event, a time for announcements and extracurricular activities. But Amber had other plans. When Maya received a message from Jasmine telling her about Amber's plot, her heart sank. Amber had orchestrated the perfect trap. She was going to accuse Maya of causing the chaos, of being the troublemaker. She had arranged for a public showdown, hoping to expose Maya as the freak she had painted her to be. And if Maya showed any sign of weakness, Amber would win. But Maya wasn't going to fall for it. She wasn't going to let Amber control her story anymore. The day of the assembly arrived, and the school gym was buzzing with excitement. Students were chatting in groups, anticipating the usual speeches, the performances, and the routine announcements. Maya walked into the gym, trying to keep her nerves under control. She'd been through so much in the past few weeks, and now the tension in the air felt unbearable. Amber had arranged for the whole school to witness the confrontation, and the thought of being in front of everyone made her stomach churn. But this time Maya wasn't walking in as a victim. She wasn't walking in as someone afraid of being seen. She was walking in as someone who had found her strength and wasn't going to back down. Maya found her seat near the back, her heart racing but her mind clear. She glanced over at the stage, where Amber was already standing, surrounded by her usual crowd of followers. Amber's posture was confident, her eyes gleaming with the certainty that she would finally expose Maya as the troublemaker. Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of her opponent's gaze, but she refused to show fear. The assembly began with the usual routine, brief announcements, a few performances, but Maya couldn't focus on any of it. Her eyes kept flicking to Amber, who was sitting at the front of the room. Her lips curled into a smug smile. Then, just as the assembly was nearing its midpoint, Amber stood up, her voice cutting through the air. "Excuse me, Principal Henderson," she said, her tone sweet but sharp. "I have something I'd like to address." The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to Amber. The tension was palpable. "Thank you, Amber," Principal Henderson said, his voice hesitant. "What's on your mind?" Amber smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a look of dominance, of control. "I just think it's time we talk about the real issue here, the issue that's been causing all the chaos at this school for months. You see, there's someone who's been disrupting everything, making life unbearable for everyone else. Someone who thinks they can get away with being different." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Amber was about to expose her to the entire school, but Maya wasn't going to let her. Amber turned her gaze toward Maya, her eyes filled with venom. "I think it's time we finally address the real problem. Maya, she's been the one causing all the trouble. She's the one who's been trying to destroy everything we've worked so hard to build. And now it's time for her to face the consequences." Maya could feel the eyes of the entire gym on her, but she didn't flinch. She stood up slowly, her hands at her sides, her posture strong. The room was silent, the tension hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. Amber's words had landed like a bomb, but Maya wasn't going to let them explode in her face. She wasn't going to let Amber control the narrative anymore. This time, she was taking control. "Actually, Amber," Maya said, her voice calm but firm, "I think you're the one who's been causing all the trouble." Amber's eyes widened, clearly not expecting the challenge. The room shifted, as if the audience could sense the change in the air. Amber had been so sure of herself, so certain that she could make Maya the villain. But Maya was turning the tables. "I've spent the last few months letting you call the shots, letting you bully me into submission," Maya continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "But not anymore. You want to talk about trouble? Let's talk about how you've been spreading lies, turning people against each other, making everyone feel small just so you can feel big. You've been the one causing the chaos, not me." The room was dead silent as the words hung in the air. Maya's gaze never left Amber's, her eyes filled with a quiet strength that Amber couldn't break. She could feel the eyes of her classmates on her, But this time, the weight of their gaze didn't faze her. Amber's influence over them was crumbling. Amber opened her mouth to respond, but the words didn't come. For the first time, she was at a loss. Her facade of confidence was cracking, and everyone could see it. The mask of power she had worn for so long was slipping. Maya wasn't just standing up to her, she was shattering everything Amber had built. "This isn't just about you and me, Amber," Maya said, her voice steady. "This is about the system you've created, the one that makes people like me feel like they don't belong. Well, I'm here to tell you that I belong, and I'm not going anywhere." The room exploded into applause. Students who had been silent for so long were now cheering, their support palpable. Maya had done it. She had stood up, not just to Amber, but to everything Amber represented, and the crowd was behind her. As the noise settled, Principal Henderson stepped forward, his voice cutting through the commotion. "Amber, Maya, I think we've all heard enough." Amber's face flushed with anger, but Maya didn't look away. The fight wasn't over, but she had won the first round. Maya's public stand against Amber has sent shockwaves through the school, and for the first time Amber's power seems to be waning. But the fight is far from over. Amber still has tricks up her sleeve, and Maya knows that the battle for her identity is far from finished. What will Amber do next? And how far is Maya willing to go to protect herself? Full Chapter 11. The days after the assembly were a whirlwind. The cheers from the crowd still echoed in Maya's ears as she walked through the halls, head held high. She had done it. For the first time in her life she had stood up, not just for herself, but for every person who had ever felt like they didn't belong, like they didn't fit the mold Amber had set. But despite the victory, the shadows of Amber's retaliation loomed larger than ever. Amber wasn't one to take defeat lightly. Her pride was shattered, and now she was intent on making Maya's life a living hell. The first sign of what was to come arrived on a Tuesday afternoon when Maya was walking to her locker. A message from Jasmine popped up on her phone, her words frantic. "Maya, don't go to your locker. Amber's had something set up. It's bad." Maya's heart skipped a beat as she quickly made her way toward the lockers, her mind racing. What had Amber done this time? The worst of it was, Maya didn't have to wait long to find out. She turned the corner and saw a group of students gathered around her locker. As soon as they saw her approaching, they parted to reveal what had been done. Maya's stomach turned as she stared at the open locker door. Inside, there were scraps of paper, pictures and personal items that had been cut up and torn to shreds. Her yearbook photo, cut in half. Handwritten notes with cruel messages scrawled across them. The worst part, there were items from her personal belongings, small things she had kept for years, strewn across the floor. Amber had gone through her stuff. She had violated her privacy just to make her feel small. A cruel laugh echoed through the crowd, and Maya turned to see Amber standing at the end of the hallway, a smug expression on her face. "This is your fault, Maya," Amber said, her voice dripping with malice. "You're the one who tried to ruin my reputation. Now I'm ruining yours. This is just the beginning." Maya's pulse quickened, the anger bubbling up inside her. This was more than just a prank. This was an attack on her. Amber had crossed a line, but this time Maya wasn't backing down. Without a word, Maya stepped toward her locker, picking up the pieces of her yearbook photo. She didn't look at Amber, didn't let her see how much this had hurt. She didn't want Amber to see her weakness. She didn't want to give her the satisfaction. Amber watched her, clearly waiting for Maya to break, to show any sign of vulnerability. But Maya didn't flinch. She gathered the remnants of her locker, stuffing them back into her bag, without saying a word. "I'm not going to let you control me anymore, Amber," Maya said, her voice calm but firm. "You can do whatever you want to me, but I'm not afraid of you." The next few days were a blur of tension. Amber's attacks had escalated, not just at school, but in every corner of Maya's life. Her phone was flooded with messages, many of them threatening her, others filled with insults and hatred. The rumors Amber had spread were everywhere. Maya began to feel the pressure mounting. Her friends were distancing themselves, scared of being associated with her. The whispers, the stares, the comments, everything was weighing on her. She could feel herself starting to crack under the pressure. It wasn't just the school anymore. Amber had made it personal. One night, after an exhausting training session at the gym, Maya came home to an empty house. Her parents were both at work, and the house felt colder than usual. She dropped her gym bag by the door and collapsed onto the couch, her thoughts spiraling out of control. Amber's words echoed in her mind. "You'll always be nothing but a freak. You'll never fit in." For the first time, Maya wondered if Amber was right. She had stood up so many times, fought so hard, but it always felt like one step forward, two steps back. What if Amber was too powerful? What if Maya was just another victim of a system that never cared about people like her? But then she remembered the words her father had told her, the words that had always stayed with her. "You fight because you have to, not because you want to." Maya clenched her fists, her heart pounding. She wasn't going to let Amber win. She wasn't going to let anyone take her identity, her strength, her pride. The next day, as Maya walked into school, the tension in the air was palpable. Amber had turned the school into her personal playground, using her influence to turn everyone against Maya. The whispers, the taunts, they had all escalated. Maya couldn't escape it, no matter how hard she tried. But when she walked into the gym that afternoon, something shifted. It was as if the weight of everything she had been through, the bullying, the rumors, the isolation, suddenly lifted. She walked to the center of the gym, facing the heavy bag that hung there, waiting for her. She wrapped her hands in tape, her movements slow and deliberate. She could feel the anger building inside her, the pressure from the outside world crashing in. She could feel Amber's taunts echoing in her ears, the weight of the lies, the manipulation, but Maya didn't let it control her. Each punch she threw was a release. Each strike was a reminder of the strength she had inside her. She wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for her future, for her right to exist as she was, without apology. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been, and told they didn't belong. The gym was silent except for the rhythmic thudding of her fists against the bag. She was in the zone now, her focus sharper than ever. She wasn't fighting Amber anymore. She was fighting for herself, for her identity, for her dignity. And when the final punch landed, the bag swayed, and for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she had finally broken free. That night, Maya sat at her desk, the weight of everything that had happened still heavy on her shoulders. Amber's final attack had almost broken her, but now she felt something different inside her. The fight wasn't over, but Maya knew that she had the strength to see it through. Maya's resolve has never been stronger. But Amber is far from done. As Amber's attacks become even more desperate, Maya will have to make one final choice. Fight for the life she wants, or give in to the darkness Amber has tried to create. The final battle is coming, and it will be the ultimate test of Maya's strength and courage. Full Chapter 12. The air was thick with tension as the final day of Amber's scheme approached. The school assembly had been scheduled, and with it, Amber's last-ditch attempt to take Maya down. But Maya had already decided this wasn't just about Amber anymore. It was about standing firm in her truth, reclaiming the space she had carved for herself, and showing everyone what it meant to never back down. As the final bell rang, signaling the beginning of the assembly, Maya made her way to the gym. She didn't feel nervous, though the weight of what she was about to face pressed heavily on her chest. Amber had done everything she could to humiliate her, to make her feel like she didn't belong. But now Maya was standing tall. She had trained, She had fought, and she had never given up. This time, she was going to finish what had started. When she entered the gym, the familiar faces of her classmates greeted her, but this time it was different. There was no fear in their eyes. They were no longer looking at her as the outsider, the freak. Today, they saw her as someone who had stood up to the bully and refused to be broken. Amber was already standing at the front of the room, flanked by her usual followers. The smugness was back in her eyes, the belief that she had everything under control. But Maya knew this was the moment where everything would change. Amber was about to lose it all. As the assembly began, Principal Henderson stood at the podium, his voice announcing the start of the proceedings. The usual chatter buzzed around the gym, but Maya's focus was on Amber, who was standing tall at the front. She could feel Amber's eyes on her, and for a moment, Maya wondered if Amber could sense that this was it, the end of her reign. "Maya, please come forward," Principal Henderson called, interrupting her thoughts. The gym fell silent as Maya walked toward the stage. Every eye was on her now. She could feel the weight of their gaze, but it no longer felt like a burden. This wasn't about pleasing them. This was about standing up for herself. "Amber has made some accusations about you, Maya," Principal Henderson continued. "This assembly is meant to address the conflict and ensure that all students feel safe and heard." Maya nodded, her heart steady. She had prepared for this moment. She knew exactly what she was going to say. "Amber has done everything she can to tear me down," Maya began, her voice calm but resolute. "She spread lies, turned people against me, and made me feel like I didn't belong. But I'm here to tell you that I'm not afraid anymore." Amber's eyes flashed with fury, but Maya didn't look at her. She didn't need to. "I've spent so long letting other people define me," Maya continued. "I've let people tell me who I am, what I should look like, what I should wear, how I should act. But I've realized something. I define me, and no one, not Amber, not anyone, can take that away." The gym was silent as Maya's words hung in the air. Amber's face had gone pale, the sneer she'd been wearing fading into something else, something that looked like fear. "I'm proud of who I am," Maya said, her voice strong now. "I'm proud of my hair, my skin, my strength, and my ability to stand up for myself. Amber can say whatever she wants. She can spread whatever lies she wants, but I know who I am, and I know I'm enough." Maya turned to Amber then, her gaze unwavering. Amber opened her mouth to say something, but the words didn't come. She was caught off guard, stunned by Maya's confidence. "For too long, I've let you control this narrative," Maya continued, "but today, I take it back. This is my story, my truth, and I'm done letting you write it for me." The room was silent. Maya could feel the eyes of her classmates on her, and for the first time, they weren't full of judgment. They were full of respect. They were with her. Amber stood there, seething, her fists clenched, but Maya didn't back down. She stood tall, unshaken. "This isn't over," Amber finally spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You think this little speech changes anything? You're nothing, Maya. You'll always be nothing." But Maya wasn't listening. She had already won. Amber had thrown everything she could at Maya, but in the end, it was Maya's strength, her dignity, her refusal to back down that had won the battle. Maya turned to Principal Henderson, who was now watching the exchange with a mixture of surprise and approval. "Amber's reign of terror is over," Maya said, her voice firm. "And it's time for all of us to stop letting people like her control us. We all have the power to stand up for what's right. We all have the right to be ourselves, without fear of being torn down." Maya turned and walked off the stage, her heart pounding, but the weight she had carried for so long finally lifting. The gym erupted into applause, and for the first time, in a long time, Maya felt a sense of peace wash over her. Later that afternoon, as Maya walked down the hall, she could hear the whispers, but this time they were different. The students who had once turned their backs on her were now nodding in respect, offering her shy smiles, and a few even gave her small words of encouragement. Amber's power had finally shattered, and Maya was the one who had delivered the blow. But as Maya turned the corner, she saw Amber standing by the lockers, her arms crossed, her face twisted in anger. Maya wasn't surprised. Amber wasn't going to just let this go, but Maya wasn't afraid. "You think you've won, don't you?" Amber said, her voice low and threatening. "You're still nothing. You're still just that girl with the big hair and the attitude." Maya looked at her, her expression calm, but her eyes burning with resolve. "You're wrong, Amber. I'm not the girl you used to pick on. I'm the girl who fought for herself, and no matter what you say, you can't take that away from me." Amber's anger is only just beginning, but Maya knows the truth now. She's no longer afraid. The final battle may have been fought, but the war is far from over. Will Amber regroup and strike again, or will she be forced to accept that Maya has claimed her place in the world? Only time will tell. The days after the assembly felt like a strange kind of calm. Maya had finally defeated Amber, at least in the way that mattered most. Amber had thrown everything she had at Maya, trying to humiliate her, tear her down, and take away her sense of self. But Maya had fought back, not with fists, but with strength, resilience, and the undeniable truth of who she was. Amber's power had shattered, and Maya had won. But as Maya walked through the hallways the following week, she realized that Amber wasn't the only battle she had fought. The fight for her identity, her place in this world, was just beginning. Maya was sitting in the cafeteria, the noise of the students around her feeling distant as she picked at her lunch. She had finally made her peace with the chaos that had come before, but she couldn't ignore the fact that the road ahead would still be difficult. Amber's defeat had sent shockwaves through the school, and Maya could feel the residual tension in the air. Some students had started to reach out to her, offering support, but others were still too afraid to be seen with her, still bound by the social structure Amber had created. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Jasmine. "Hey, I know things have been crazy, but we need to talk. Amber's lost it, and I think she's planning something else. Be careful." Maya's stomach sank. She had known Amber wouldn't back down easily, but this was different. Amber had always been a master at manipulating situations to her advantage. But Maya wasn't the same girl who had been afraid of Amber. She was stronger now, more confident, and no matter what Amber tried to do, Maya wouldn't let her break her. Later that day, as Maya left class, she noticed a familiar face standing near the lockers. Amber was there, but this time something was different. Amber's posture was slumped, her eyes devoid of the arrogance she'd once worn like armor. She was standing alone, her usual entourage nowhere in sight. Maya could see the change in Amber, the cracks in her confidence. She wasn't the powerful figure she had once been. She was just a girl who had lost everything, her status, her friends, her reputation. The question was, what would Amber do now that she had been defeated? Maya hesitated for a moment before walking over to her. Amber didn't seem to notice at first, her head down, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. When she looked up, her eyes met Maya's, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "I didn't expect to see you," Amber finally said, her voice flat. "You've won, Maya. You've humiliated me in front of everyone. But I still don't understand why you didn't just let me win." Maya took a deep breath, her gaze steady. "Because I've learned something, Amber. Winning isn't about tearing someone else down. It's about standing firm in who you are, even when the world is trying to make you feel small." Amber scoffed, looking away. "You think that makes you better than me?" "No," Maya said, her voice calm but firm. "It makes me stronger, and that's something you can't take away from me." Amber didn't respond. She just stood there, her arms still crossed, the weight of everything Maya had said settling. In the space between them, for a moment the two girls just stood in silence, a silence that spoke louder than any words. Amber had lost, and Maya had won. Yes, in a public sense, but more importantly, she had won in a way that mattered far more. She had fought for herself, and she had refused to let anyone tell her who she was. The rest of the school year passed in a blur. Maya found herself surrounded by new friends, students who had once been too afraid to stand up to Amber, but who now saw her for who she truly was. She'd become a quiet force in the school, a symbol of resilience and courage in the face of adversity. It wasn't just about winning the fight against Amber, it was about proving to herself that she was worthy, just as she was. Her relationship with Jasmine grew stronger, and the two of them found solace in each other's company. They talked about everything: school, dreams, the future. And for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she belonged. But there was still the lingering question of what would happen with Amber. Would she truly accept defeat, or would she try to make another move? Maya knew she couldn't let her guard down completely, but she also knew that whatever happened next, she would face it with the same strength and resolve that had carried her this far. One evening, as Maya sat on the porch of her house, watching the sunset, her father came out and sat beside her. He didn't say anything at first, just sitting next to her, taking in the view. But after a few moments, he turned to her and smiled. "You did good, Maya," he said, his voice soft but proud. "You've come a long way." Maya smiled back, her heart swelling with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. All those lessons you taught me, they helped me more than you'll ever know," her father chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "You had it in you all along. I just helped you see it." Maya leaned back in her chair, looking out at the horizon. "I used to be afraid of standing up for myself," she admitted. "But now, I feel like I can take on the world." Her father nodded. "You can, because the greatest fight isn't about winning the battles around you. It's about winning the fight inside yourself." As Maya moved into the next phase of her life, she knew that there would always be challenges ahead. Amber might have been defeated, but the world wasn't always kind. People would try to tear her down again. But Maya knew one thing for sure. She was stronger than anything life could throw at her. She had learned how to fight, not just with her fists, but with her heart. And that was something no one could ever take away. Epilogue. Maya's journey had taken her from a place of fear and uncertainty to a place of strength and pride. She had fought against a bully who tried to break her, but in the end, she had become stronger than she ever imagined. It wasn't just about the fight against Amber. It was about the fight to be true to herself, to stand tall in the face of adversity, and to embrace who she truly was. She had found her strength, and in doing so, she had learned the most important lesson of all, that she was enough, and that was her victory.